Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Viper Bytes. We've been previewing the entire training camp battles going on in the AFC. We've already touched on the AFC East, the AFC West, and the AFC North. Today, we're going to talk about those battles pertaining to the AFC South. In particular, Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Tennessee. What kind of battles are you looking for to help your fantasy rosters going into 2021? We're only a few days away before training camps open where veterans are starting to report. So let's take a look at what to expect moving forward. And our first stop is going to be to Houston, where the Houston Texans have all kinds of questions going on with that team right now.
We're looking at an offense that's moving down the field with the ninth play of this drive coming on a second down and one. And handoff here to David Johnson, and David Johnson looking for the end zone, and he gets in there to the first score of the season, which looked as if it belonged to DeMarcus Robinson.
We're going to talk a lot about David Johnson, but let's just touch base quickly on the quarterback position. Now, Deshaun Watson's got himself in all kinds of trouble there in the offseason. We're not going to go too deep into that. Tyrod Taylor, he looks like he's got two fully functional lungs going into 2021. He should be the starter if Deshaun Watson is unavailable. They also brought in Jeff Driscoll, but his best days may be behind him, as well as draft pick Davis Mills here from Stanford. We see this is going to be Tyrod Taylor's team right now, running quarterback and move the pocket a little bit with his arm or with his legs. He's still competent enough to throw the ball. So we'll see what Tyrod Taylor can do with this offense, but it's going to start in the backfield and how they can establish the run game to establish their offense. And it comes down to David Johnson, Mark Ingram, and Phillip Lindsay. Now, the early odds-on favorite to win this position is David Johnson. Last year with the Texans, he averaged 4.7 yards per carry there. And even though he was battling a little bit of injury, he seems to be more than capable of carrying a bit of that load. Now, if he does stumble, if he gets injured, they did bring over the recently released Phillip Lindsay from the Denver Broncos, who had 118 carries last year for the Broncos, and got him on a cheap one-year deal, $3.25 million, with only about a $1 million guaranteed, which kind of ensures him that kind of a backup role for the Texans. Now, where it gets interesting is not all three of these backs are likely to make their roster here. Mark Ingram, at 32 years of age, seems to be the odd man out. Now, you look a little bit deeper here. He was kind of passed by J.K. Dobbins. We've seen that coming a long time ago. And Gus Edwards cemented his role with the Ravens last year, which left Ingram as kind of the odd man out there in Baltimore. There's a good chance he's going to be the odd man out here in Houston as well. In 2020, he only amassed about 299 rushing yards there on 72 attempts and only playing about 160 snaps. And that's just not good enough in Baltimore, and it's surely not going to help the Houston Texans move forward. So if you're looking for backs to own, David Johnson, you're probably taking a late round flyer on him, probably around round 8 in most of your drafts for fantasy. And Phillip Lindsay, best ball kind of guy, he could have some value, but I wouldn't be banking on anyone from Houston really to cement your football championships this year. Now, where it's going to get interesting here for me is that wide receiver 2 spot. We know Brandin Cooks, he's going to be cooking all year. He is probably going to have the lion's share of the targets based on his abilities. And we always underrate Brandin Cooks. So let's move on here. We'll talk about the real battle here at the wide receiver 2 position. We have Kiki Kuti, who's still on a one-year deal with about $182,000 in dead cap. He may survive roster cuts based on that, but he only managed 33 receptions last year, and he has had a history of suffering some injuries. We have never really seen the real Kiki step up, so we had flashes in the pan last year towards the end of the season. What can we expect from him moving forward? Well, I'm not expecting a whole heck of a lot, especially with the wily veteran Randall Cobb still in place. And I think Randall Cobb, he is a solid wide receiver 3. I don't think he's going to be the wide receiver 2 on this team, but he's someone who can definitely give you some value at the position. He can definitely be a reliable target for Tyrod Taylor, kind of that security blanket working the underneath. Now, the wide receiver 2 for me in Houston is going to be Nico Collins. They drafted him to come out there to be the number 2. He's got that big size that you expect from a wide receiver 2 that complements Brandin Cooks' speed on the other side. You're looking at 6'4", 222 pounds. You put Cobb in the slot. You put Brandin Cooks on the other side. You put Nico Collins on the boundary there, and you put it up there in the end zone. He's going to be that red zone target, I think, and that's where it's going to come down to. I think you're going to look at Collins be the number 2 behind Brandin Cooks, with a little bit of Cobb kind of fit in the slot and Kiki Kuti to kind of maybe get some reps in there. I wouldn't expect a whole heck of a lot. out of the Houston Texans offense in general. But if you're looking for a wide receiver to take a risk on, Nico Collins is probably your best bet there. Now, we're going to move on over to Indianapolis. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Colts and what they got going on their offense.
3rd and 6. That is complete. T.Y. Hilton across the field to the end zone for the touchdown.
It's working across. Just watch the natural rub in the middle of the field. It creates a pick. So the corner that's covering T.Y. Hilton falls behind, and not a lot you can do if you're Phillip Gaines.
Now, the Indianapolis Colts have a very interesting dilemma there at the wide receiver 1 position. They have a wily vet in T.Y. Hilton who can still get the job done. He's been there. He's done that. He knows how to get open. We watched him there on the video there on those crossing patterns. He still has a purpose on this offense. Moving over to Paris Campbell, we've never seen him. We don't know what Paris Campbell can do. We got all kinds of hype. We hyped him last year. We hyped him the year before. We want to believe in Paris Campbell. We want to have something to, you know what, this is our guy. We want him. But we don't know what's going to happen. I'm not too sure. I can't trust Paris Campbell. I can't recommend him based on what we haven't seen of him. We could see something from him, but we haven't seen nothing out of Paris Campbell yet. And I'm pumping the brakes there on him a little bit. Now, the guy I'm intrigued by is Michael Pittman, the 2020 second rounder out of USC, who should be opposite. I think it's going to be Hilton and I think it's going to be Hilton and Michael Pittman on the outsides there. And we know how much Carson Wentz likes to close his eyes and just kind of throw that prayer up there. Michael Pittman's that big body wide receiver that in the red zone and in the end zone, he's going to be able to get the job done. Now, we talk about Paris Campbell has this potential. We know he's got that potential. We've seen it in little short glimpses, especially in college. If he can be on the field, maybe he gives them a great 3 wide receivers to kind of work with. Why do I got the feeling, though, that Zach Pascal is going to be that 3rd option there in Indianapolis, because we can't just trust on Paris Campbell here. So I think Michael Pittman becomes the wide receiver 1, especially in leagues with that 6 points per touchdown receptions. You want to look at it that way. I think he's the guy to own there more than anybody. Tight ends will factor in here a little bit. Jack Doyle, I think he's going to factor in. I don't know if Mo Alley Cox is going to be a thing. We've been waiting for him to be a thing, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Now, another interesting battle is going to be Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, and more particular, the use of Marlon Mack. Going into last season, it was Mack versus Jonathan Taylor, sprinkling a little Nyheim Hines. But the problem is Marlon Mack suffered one of those Achilles injuries. And the one thing we know about an Achilles injury, we just seen Cam Akers go down. God bless him, man. Hopefully he gets back sooner and better than ever. But you lose a little bit of that explosiveness, especially at the running back position. In those cuts, in those turns, it makes things a little bit more difficult. I'm no doctor, so check out some of my buddies there like Jeff Mueller and Edwin with Fantasy Points. These are guys that probably know a little bit more about this Achilles injury than I do. But there's going to be a loss of explosion there. Jonathan Taylor was incredible as a rookie, putting up 1,468 yards from scrimmage and showed that he could be a dominant every down back if given the opportunity. But you know what? The Colts still believe in Marlon Mack. They were able to go out and re-sign him to give him a 1-year, $2 million contract, fully guaranteed. Be like, you know what? We know last year you were injured. We like what you did with us the year before. You showed us what you can do. Let's see what you can do here. Here's a prove-it type deal for you. So we'll see how this all breaks down. But it's going to be Jonathan Taylor. We know that's going to be the main dog there. We're looking at probably 250 touches or carries for him. But how much factor is Marlon Mack going to play into this Colts run game? Nyheim Hines has that role already cut out as that pass-catching third down guy. He was really reliable for Phillip Rivers last year. Does Marlon Mack get that rapport early with new quarterback there in Carson Wentz? That's yet to be seen here. Now, we're going to head down to Duval County to talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Drive has taken up nearly 8 minutes. Robinson has some room. Robinson, there he goes. First NFL touchdown for the undrafted rookie, James Robinson. Handed off to Robinson, up the middle. He's got the first down and more. There he goes again. Robinson up to the races, and they catch him at the 20. 180.
you knew I was going to pump in some J-Rob on my highlight films. We're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no bigger truther out there than me when it comes to James Robinson. Maybe my boy there, Bobby Gilchrist, but you know what? We still believe in him. I think he's still going to be that back right now. I get some kind of weird Chris Carson, Rashad Penny type vibe coming here between James Robinson and Travis Etienne. I'm probably wrong, but these two guys could not be any different when it comes to draft capital. There's a very good investment at the running back position here in the first round for Travis Etienne, and James Robinson was undrafted. We're talking Etienne, 25th overall, Robinson, not even picked. Now, what we can't forget is James Robinson had over 1,400 scrimmage yards last year, the most of any undrafted rookie through 14 weeks of the NFL season. And he's also became the 4th undrafted rookie and the fastest to at least 1,000 yards, which means he's probably unlikely to go away anytime soon. Etienne, give the man his due. He was an absolute beast at Clemson with an eye-popping nearly 5,000 rushing yards and a 7.2 yards per carry. Throw in another 1,155 receiving yards in there with well over 6,100 scrimmage yards on only 788 touches. That is absolutely amazing. You know you got yourself a big-time home run hitter in Travis Etienne. I would love the Jaguars to kind of mix both of them in at the same time. I think you could split both Robinson out into the slot. We know they kind of got Etienne working on the passing game there, a little bit in the slot there as well, working on some patterns there. Let's look at ourselves. They're both fantastic running backs. I think this is going to be a 1A, 1B approach, and I don't think they could go wrong with this because this is a great spot for both of them. You can run James Robinson into the ground while Travis Etienne gets accustomed to what's going on at the National Football League. But James Robinson still has that ability, that standalone value in your fantasy leagues to still produce, dare I say, RB2 numbers. And, of course, if you're in a best ball, Travis Etienne is a guy you got to own because he can bust off a 98-yard touchdown in a blink of an eye. The other battle to watch there in Duval County is the one at the wide receiver position, particularly the wide receiver 1 position, because we don't know how this is going to quite shake out yet. We got DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. If you're following Twitter, you're going to believe there's a huge following for Laviska here. He is the guy that kind of catches your attention, the guy you want to kind of gravitate towards. Both have had very similar career paths to this point. Both were second-round picks. Both are big, strong, outside-type wide receivers. Chark is entering his 4th year. He was a 3rd-year starter at LSU. 1,000-yard season, 2019, had 106 targets the last 2 seasons. So you know he's getting that target share. You know he's going to get his targets. Laviska Shenault, kind of that gadget guy. Move him in the slot, move him to the outside, big, physical. For the most part, was healthy compared to his college career. But you're talking about a guy who's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, 6'2", 220. Even as a rookie, 58 receptions, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns on nearly 79 targets. So we know last year DJ Chark had the targets, and Laviska Shenault was kind of coming on strong towards the end. But let's not forget about Marvin Jones. He's going to factor in somewhere here, especially when it comes to those touchdowns. Now, who is the guy that Trevor Lawrence will gravitate to? I think it's going to be Laviska Shenault. He's going to give him that kind of that security blanket, that receiver who's going to run underneath, create those mismatches. You're going to be able to put Laviska in the slot. You're going to be able to bounce him outside. You got a bigger, stronger target. I think Laviska Shenault is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. But I think you're going to see a pretty even distribution of the ball between Chark, Shenault, with a little bit of sprinkle of Marvin Jones in there. Now, no AFC South training camp battle is going to be complete without talking a little bit about the Tennessee Titans and what they can do down there.
The quarterback voice from Ryan Tannehill. He almost got him to jump. Yes, he did. He gives it to Henry. Henry trying to get to the outside. Henry in the backfield. And they give it to him. He goes to the right side. He's got room inside the 5. Touchdown, Tennessee. 22 gets the ball and gets a hole and room to run. Midfield. Inside the 40-yard line before he is not.
We're going to get to Derrick Hewnry in the running game in a second, but let's focus on that slot wide receiver battle in Tennessee. They went out and they signed Josh Reynolds from the Los Angeles Rams there. He looked like he had that. You were drafting early before the NFL draft. You were definitely grabbing yourself some Josh Reynolds. Now, a little funny thing happened along the way. The NFL draft kicked in, and they went out and they got themselves Des Fitzpatrick to kind of come in as a compliment. We know A.J. Brown is going to be there. He's kind of the guy going to dictate everything and anything. But we really thought that Josh Reynolds was going to have a role with this team. Not so fast. Pump the brakes. I think this is probably going to be Josh's off the get-go, but I can see Fitzpatrick coming in there a little bit more towards the end of the season and taking off. Of course, we can't talk about the Titans, A.J. Brown and Josh Reynolds and Des Fitzpatrick without mentioning Julio Jones, who is clearly the number 2 wide receiver there. So this is clearly a battle of that slot and the slot only. Wide receiver 3. We know that the Titans are going to run the ball a heavy dose, so the slot receiver may not factor in a whole lot. Didn't really factor in a lot last year. Something you want to keep an eye on. Adam Humpries averaged about 5 targets a game last year, 4 targets per game in 2019. That's kind of what I think you could expect here between Josh Reynolds and Des Fitzpatrick. I think Reynolds is going to get those targets, like I said earlier. He signed a 1-year, $1.75 million contract. Trying to get that, but we also got Des Fitzpatrick, 4th-round pick. Impressive college career at Louisville, 154 passes there, 2,589 yards, 21 touchdowns, 16.8 yards per reception, and he had a killer Senior Bowl there. So definitely name on the rise. Mark down Reynolds to play start the season there, the slot. Fitzpatrick to take it over before the end of the season. Now we have to talk about the running back position here, especially in light of the recent injury to Cam Akers. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, in which Darrell Henderson now becomes that de facto number 1 running back. What would the Titans do if something were to happen to Derrick Hewnry? This is where the battle is. If there's any time where he's going to miss a few games for whatever reason, we know the season's going to be a little bit different with an 18 weeks kind of thrown in there, 17 games. They might think about giving Derrick Hewnry a breather somewhere in between just to kind of get him back. The Titans only have Jeremy McNichols, Darrington Evans, Kyrie Blasingame, and, of course, Brian Hill on the roster. And that's a little bit dicey because that is not the depth that you would hope for. Now, if you look on Twitter, Darrington Evans is a high riser based on what he's doing on Twitter. He's out there speaking for small content creators. You know what? He's getting out there, interacting with the fans. He's becoming a fan favorite on Twitter. And you know what? I'm kind of buying into that a little bit. We know he's going to be the number 2 back there, but can they manage to have any success over the course of the season without Henry in the lineup? Can Darrington Evans handle that 32? Can this running back by committee, forget about just Evans, can this committee handle 32 carries per game? And maybe you have to rely on Tannehill, who's only averaged about 30 pass attempts in 2020, to carry this offense moving forward. Is there an opportunity for a 32-year-old Julio to fill that void? Is he going to take away from Derrick Hewnry? We know last year Corey Davis, A.J. Brown both had very good years. I think you could expect a very similar thing from Julio compared to what Corey Davis was able to do. And as we move forward here, the offensive line graded out about his 15th overall last year, and that's more than enough for Derrick Hewnry to flirt with 2,000 yards once again. So just to kind of sum it up, it's a very scary thought if Derrick Hewnry were to miss time. I don't think this committee can handle 32 touches. And I'm not 100% sure Tannehill could throw 40 times per game, but he is one of the most efficient passers in the National Football League. He's been able to do the best with the least amount of opportunities, but I think a lot of it has to do with everyone filling those boxes in the Derrick Hewnry role, kind of trying to prevent him from scoring. So, man, all I got to say is Tennessee, hopefully Derrick Hewnry can keep rolling out there, running for that 2,000 yards, but it's time to really think deeply, if he were to miss any time, how this backfield is going to look. That said, that's our AFC South recap. Stick around a little bit later. We got some NFC. We're going to talk about the NFC East, the West, the South, and the North as well. We're going to make sure we go around the horn of the entire National Football League. And with that said, we're out of here.